All right, we're about to go live here on What's in Chicago's Water. And I think we're closing in at 9 o'clock. And so we'll get started here in just about a second. Great. Okay. My name is Andrew Wilson. I'm with Angel Water in Barrington, Illinois. And today I'm going to talk about what's in Chicago's water. To begin with, a little bit about me. My background was in healthcare when I was younger. And over the past 15 years, I've had the pleasure of owning Angel Water, and we're a licensed plumbing company in the state. And I've been passionate about making people's water more healthy. So my whole life has really been about how do I help my fellow man become more healthy. A long time ago, I thought drugs was it. So I was in the pharmaceutical world, but as time went on, I learned very clearly that actually water is the most intrinsic thing to help make you and your family more healthy. So since such a gigantic part of our population is literally on Chicago water, I thought today what we'd do is talk about Chicago water and give you a little understanding of what is in the water. And from there, you can do your own research as to determine whether or not you think that's healthy for you or not. Now, to begin with, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the contaminants that are actually in the water. Now, to be very first off, I want you to understand that Chicago meets the EPA standards for healthy drinking water. And for years, the government, and starting with really Mayor Daley, has said, oh, we have the best water in the world. And when we take a look at the world, we really do. We actually have water that is potable. We just simply have to add chlorine to it to kill bacteria, and the water is in pretty decent shape. But the water goes through a treatment plant where we add a lot of chlorine to it, and then it also goes through a piping system that dates back to the 1900s. So early 1900s and late 1800s. So, from that perspective, things happen to the water. In addition, there's natural occurrences that are in the Earth's crust that contaminate the water. And as we become more well-educated compared to the 70s, 60s, 50s, we start realizing that actually things do affect our health. I mean, you are a proverbial filter. You literally are a filter, whether you take a look at your lungs, your liver, your kidney, your stomach, your pancreas. You are a living filter. And so your filter takes things out of the food that you eat and the water you drink. And remember, you're made up of trillions and trillions of cells. And so those cells need to have a few things in order to work correctly. It needs food, and it needs water, and it needs air. Now, air quality is, certainly something to talk about. Food quality is obviously something to talk about. In fact, that's the uprising of organic foods is gigantic in today's environment. Whole Foods and every single grocery store today now offers organic foods. That's foods without pesticides and herbicides added to it. But when it comes to the third one, which is water, we sort of just take it for granted that it's safe. And that's because our government says it's safe. Now, if we analyze the water standards, they were set in 1972. And so today, our water is completely, might meet some of those old standards, but we now know that a lot of people are out there right now saying that those standards are too old and we need to update them. In fact, one of the standards is on hexavalent chromium-6 in 1972. The government said that actually it's healthy for the body. But as we all learned about Erin Brockovich's story, that's not true, that hexavalent chromium-6 causes cancer and it causes a lot of other illnesses. Yet the federal government does not have a standard for which Chicago's to meet. So we're going to talk about that in just a second, but it's my opinion that the water standards are old and antiquated, and it's up to you, the consumer, to be very, very vigilant as to what you put in your body and what you put in your family's body. And if you're doing that with organic foods, I applaud you. But I'm going to suggest that maybe the water would be the very first place we begin, because water is what your body's made out of. I mean, you're 60% water, your brain is 90% water. And when your body comprises that much water and you are nothing but a filter, to me, it's just logical to put to make that water as clean as possible. Otherwise, your body is literally fighting those compounds and try to get them back out of your body. So to me, it's pretty simple. Let's see what's in the water, and then you and your family can sort of decide, is that something that you want out of your water? Now, to begin with, I've listed here, so you can't really see that, but there's several things that are in our water. Lead is, for instance, very popular right now. There's a lot of articles in Chicago going on about Chicago water. And so that's a subject, one of the big concerns that's in our Chicago water supply. Bromodichloromethylene, that causes cancer, that's in our water. Chloroform, chromium-6, again, that's hexavalent chromium-6. Dibromochloromethylene, these are hard to say sometimes, is in your water. Dichloroacetic acid, nitrite and nitrates, radiological contaminants, trihalomethylenes, trichloroacetic acid, and hormones. So these are some of the things that are in our water supply as defined in the EWG report. That's ewg.org. They were kind enough to spend a great deal of money on researching the EPA websites and downloading all the data of water test results provided by our city. Now, I live in Chicago, so the city sends out a water report, and it's like written for college age +8, like a doctorate has to read it to really understand it. And it doesn't, it just has to follow a government guideline as to what is to reporting to you as to what's in the water. And they really only have to report what's a violation. They don't report actually all the contaminants that are found in the water. Again, since the standards are so old, I would argue that they should be reporting exactly what are the contaminants that can cause illness in our water supply. So we've done that thanks to the EWG website. And again, this is water tests that were reported to the EPA and was simply by the Freedom of Information Act withdrawn from the EPA and reported by the EWG. So when we take a look at lead in water, I want to highlight a couple main points here, is that lead is not really naturally found in our water supply, but it is picked up by the plumbing system. As a licensed plumbing company, I'm very well versed with what plumbing really is, and that is in Latin, it is to plumb. And to plumb in Latin means to use lead. And in Rome, they had the ability to grow an empire basically because they figured out how to make water transportable through the aqueducts. However, they lined them with lead. And also the Romans used a great deal of lead in the vases that they had. The vases they held for wine, that they would make, wine would become more sweet with lead. So people liked the taste of it, but little did they know that it made you basically go crazy. It causes a lot of neurological health conditions, especially, by the way, in children. So for some reason, our government back in the 1900s, even though that was the cause for the Roman Empire to fall, decided that it was okay to use lead in our water system. I don't really understand why, but they did. Chicago, of all things, used lead until the 80s, which is absolutely crazy to me. I mean, in the 50s is when LA and New York stopped using it. I mean, think about that for a second. 2 of the 3 major cities clearly stopped using lead in the 50s. And yet Chicago, with its brilliance, decided to use lead until the 80s. So it's just astronomical. And so to me, you need to understand whether or not you have lead in your water. And the only way to really do that is to do a full test on your water supply to see if you have lead in your water. There are some tricks on determining whether or not you have a lead water service pipe. The basic one on that is to go down to where the meter or the water line comes in. And if it's a flexible metal pipe, you want to really seriously look at that to determine whether or not it's lead. You might want to call an expert to help you find that out, because that means that water supply line goes from the inside of your house all the way to the street. And there it's tied into the water supply line from the city. And the supply lines in the city use lead to seal the pipes between each other. So it's worth doing that test. And right now there's a lot of articles and a lot of discussion going on that the original way that the government said that you can eliminate lead from your drinking water is let the water run for a little while, like 3 minutes, and then the levels of lead will diminish. Well, there's a couple of recent articles that say that actually it increases it. So I really don't know what to say. I don't know, do you follow what the government has to say? Or do you follow what these articles that just came out and said? It's been discussed like on WGN radio. That's really for you to decide. Or do you want to just buy a filter to get lead out, which is, to me, makes a lot of sense. But that's for you to determine, and you certainly can do a water test to determine whether or not you actually need one. Lead, as you know, is constantly in the news, whether it's going to be in Flint, Michigan, or New Jersey, Chicago. There's numerous cases of lead being in the water supply. So again, that stems from us using lead in our plumbing supply years and years ago. And just so you know, there's no way for the city of Chicago to get a new water line that's clean, that doesn't have lead, because these pipes are all under the streets. So a lot of customers ask me, why don't they just bring us a new water line? And I go, well, they really can't. You have to understand that water, out of all the water that Jardine Water Plant makes, which is 1 billion gallons of water a day, 99% of that water is used for industry and other purposes, not drinking water. It's for flushing toilets, taking showers, all that kind of good stuff. An average human being, for instance, uses 70 gallons of water a day. Now there's arguments higher and lower, but about, let's call it 70 gallons of water a day. Out of that, how much do you drink? Not a lot, right? Less than a gallon, around a gallon. What you should be drinking is half your weight in ounces a day. But even for me, I weigh 180 pounds, so that's 90 ounces of water a day. But I use 70 gallons of water between flushing toilets, taking a shower, and all that. So it's hard for the government to actually get the water to such an extreme level, such a clean level, when most of it is not really used for drinking purposes. So that's why my personal belief is that drinking water systems will be like microwaves in the home. Everyone's going to have one. Anyhow, well, let's move on. The second contaminant I want to talk about that's very, very common is the reason why beaches get closed. Beaches get closed on a regular basis because there's coliform in the water. Coliform is as a result of sewage or animal waste getting into Lake Michigan. Now, on heavy rainfalls, you can imagine all the farm fields in Wisconsin or even northern Illinois. The cow or animal waste gets into rivers and streams that flow into the lake. And as a result, that bacteria is something that our states or our water authorities actually have to take out. So what they have to do to get rid of that is adding chlorine to water. By the way, when there's heavy rainfall, raw sewage from Milwaukee or Chicago backs up out of the sewer systems and flushes into Lake Michigan. That's really probably the largest cause of having these beaches closed. But because that water flows back into Lake Michigan, and that's our source of clean water, the city actually, when it draws it in, has to add chlorine to water. In the late 1800s, there was actually an epidemic of people who died from cholera and a couple of other diseases. And it was thought to believe that that was caused because of the water. We had heavy rainfall and the water, all the sewage backed up, and the water killed a gigantic portion of the city. Now, I don't know if that's wives' tale or not, but the reality is it's published. There's people on both sides of the argument that says it didn't happen. Some people say it does happen. I don't really know, but what we do know is around the late 1800s, beginning of 1900s, all cities in the United States started adding chlorine to water in order to disinfect it from these bacteria. And when they add back chlorine to water, we're going to get byproducts. As you can imagine, you can't even take a teaspoon of chlorine without burning your esophagus. So what makes chlorine, when you add chlorine to water, there's going to be byproducts from adding that to the water in very low doses. So the top contaminants that come from adding chlorine from water is bromodichloromethylene, chloroform, dibromochloromethylene, dichloroacetic acid, and total trihalomethylenes. These are all well known in our water supply, and again, they are at levels that are above what would be considered health guideline rules. So because they're above health guideline rules, but yet below the 1972 EPA standards, I think that it's prudent to advise my customers and my friends and my family to consider taking that out. Animal studies show that high concentration can cause liver and kidney damage, and also can cause cancer. The chromium-6. This is another contaminant that's found in our water supply, and chromium-6 is actually as a result of industry. Now, if some of you are Julia Roberts fans, you know that she won her Best Actress award for the Erin Brockovich story, which I just sat down with my daughter the other day and watched again, and it's truly amazing. I mean, if you haven't had the chance to see it, the movie itself is absolutely captivating, and she does just an absolutely spectacular job in the movie. And it's specifically about how the government and large industry tried to basically cover up the poisoning of the water supply to people in Hinckley, California. And so if it wasn't for this woman and her vigilance, these people probably would have gone away with dying a very slow and tragic death. But instead, she was able to help get the largest award ever as a class action lawsuit to these people who literally died and had dealt with major health issues as a result of hexavalent chromium-6. Now, how does that apply to us in Chicago? Well, almost all of Chicagoland, whether you're on well water or Lake Michigan water, has hexavalent chromium-6 in the water. Now, it's even at levels that is considered above the health guideline rules. So that tells you that it's something to seriously consider. Now, how does it get in our water supply? Well, both manufacturers in the city of Chicago, as they manufacture their products, their machines need to have a chemical compound, and that chemical compound washes back into Lake Michigan when we have heavy rainfall, and the sewage system can't keep up on taking that out of there. In addition to that, large corporations like BP Amoco pay to dump their hexavalent chromium-6 into Lake Michigan. That's true. They dump it and they pay for it. And it's collected and used for whatever purposes, I'm not sure, but the government takes that money. So it's literally a regulated contaminant that's allowed to go into our lake, which is a natural precious resource. So it kills me to see that happens, but it does. So you need to be vigilant in one of two things: either lobbying our government to stop that, or be aware that it is in your water, and then make your own determinations on whether or not you like to get that out. Next thing that's in the water is radium-228 and 226. Now, radium is a naturally occurring substance in our Earth's crust, and all of Chicagoland wrestles with this cancer-causing contaminant. Radium-228 and 226 is as a result of radium percolating up through the Earth, and as it percolates up through the Earth, it percolates through the water supply. So it's literally, if you want to know how it came here, according to a scientist I interviewed, he said that actually an asteroid hit our planet right where we're sitting and left all this radium behind. And that's part of the reason why we had the ice age. The glaciers came down and they covered that radium with gravel, hundreds of feet in many cases of gravel, which is now the aquifer for the Chicagoland area. But as they retracted, they left, obviously, Lake Michigan behind. So that radium is sitting on the bottom of Lake Michigan, or below the gravel under Lake Michigan. And as it percolates up, it percolates through the water and attaches to the water supply. So from that perspective, it is, again, below the government standards, but it's above health guideline rules. So it is something for you to consider when drinking Chicago water. Nitrates. Nitrates come from agricultural runoff. Again, heavy rainfall pushes that into Lake Michigan, and it also gets discharged from municipal plants when there's excess rainfall back into Lake Michigan. So it's rather gross, and it causes oxygen deprivation in infants and increased chance of cancer. By the way, radium-228 and 226 also causes cancer, if I didn't say that. Nitrates is another thing that's above health guideline rules. Again, it's agricultural runoff and gets into our water supply. There are 8 other known contaminants that are actually in our drinking water, and it's worth you knowing it. Now, again, these are below the health guideline rules, but they're worth noting so that you can make the decision, do you want to drink that or not? There is chromium total. That would be probably chromium 3 as well as chromium 6. Dibromoacetic acid, fluoride. Fluoride is actually mandated by the federal government to be added to the water. There's a lot of hot topics on that, a lot of hot discussions regarding that. Some people believe you should put it in. Some people believe you shouldn't put it in. And it's, the government's way of taming us. I guess in Germany, Adolf Hitler, there's rumors that, or statements that Adolf Hitler added that to the water supply to help make the people more docile and listen to them. I don't know if there's truth to any of that, but it's worth you researching fluoride by yourself. Haloacidic acids are in the water. Molybdenum, again, these are hard to pronounce. Strontium and vanadium. And so those two are actually as a result of, again, radium being in the Earth's crust percolating through the Earth. In any regard, from our perspective at Angel Water, we look to determine whether or not we look to just simply educate our customers. So that's our job. My job and my passion is really to try to figure out how can we live longer? What is the proverbial fountain of youth? And to me, anyhow, the proverbial fountain of youth is actually drinking as clean of water as I can possibly get. How do I flush my body to help pull out some of the toxins that either I've inhaled or I've consumed over the years? And logic to me says I should probably flush my body with water that has 0 contaminants. That's my personal feeling. Certainly, I wanted to be able to provide you all the education I could as to what's in the water, and then allow you and your family to determine whether or not you want that in or out. If at some point that you want to get that out of your water, you can contact one of your local water treatment experts. They should be able to help pair you up with a NSF certified product, or call us. Even if you don't live in our area, we'd be happy to have a conversation with you. You can always call us at 847-382-7800 or visit us at angelwater.com, or come visit us. We've had some people here to learn from this live presentation. A couple of them have asked me what can you do to take that out. But again, that's why I sort of said contact your local water filter professional and make sure, though, that they are using an NSF certified product that's designed to take out the contaminant you don't want. So again, there is a certification from National Sanitation Foundation for every single one of those chemical contaminants and radiological contaminants that I mentioned. So the product that you buy should be certified for all those. A lot of people ask me, oh, well, does Brita do that? And Brita takes out a couple of them. It really is designed to make the water taste better and take out chlorine, because chlorine doesn't make the water taste very good. But it doesn't meet all those standards at all, to my knowledge. You, again, should do your own homework and contact Brita if you like. Same thing with Pure. I mean, you have to be very careful that marketing of some of these companies are designed to make you feel like they're making your water safe, but it's your vigilance that has to check, is the contaminant I see listed being removed by the filter? And is the manufacturer proving it? A quick story I'll end on is in Oregon, a school district had a school with high levels of lead. So they decided to just go online and they bought a lead filter because it was the cheapest one on the market. And they applied it to their water. The kids started drinking it again. And then after a period of time, they tested the water and they found that no lead was removed. So they were like, what's this all about? Well, they didn't do the due diligence of making sure that the product was certified to remove lead. So I want you to understand there are a tremendous amount of marketing companies out there in the water realm. And they're like the used car, the proverbial 1970 used car dealer who would piecemeal or tape the car together and get it sold, get it off the lot, and people were left hanging. So please understand, there is no real government control at all regarding some of these claims. And so it's really very important for you to just make sure that the product that you buy has an NSF certification for taking out the contaminant that you're concerned about. Again, if you need some help on that, please give me a call. My name's Andrew with Angel Water, or visit us. So thank you again for your time and have a great weekend.